Moral Revolution community, welcome back to our podcast. I'm so glad you joined us today. We're going to dive into all things God's design for healthy sexuality. Let's talk about it.
Let's talk about it. Today is all about the battle between love and lust. We have a special guest today, which y'all are familiar with if you've listened to our podcast before. Jay Valentin is with us, and he's one of the authors of the 40-Day Journey to Purity, along with my handsome hubby, Cole Zick. We are talking all about love versus lust.
And Jay knows a lot about lust, so we thought we'd bring him in to talk about
it.
Yeah, expert on lust.
So if you are hearing this or watching this, listening to this on time, feel free to get the book, 40-Day Journey to Purity. We're going to be going through 40 days of summer, the next 40 days. If you're not, and it's too late, and you heard this a week later, a month later, no biggie. It's going to be a powerful podcast just talking about the challenges of loving and the struggle of lust and what that balance looks like. And really, you could get the book at any time.
Yeah, anytime. It's in our shop, Shop Moral Revolution.
So we're going to jump in. And I think for those that know Kaitlyn and I's story, you know, this is a big part of it. You know, Kate, you've always talked about that challenge for you.
Yeah.
I think before we even get going, like, speak to that for a second for those that maybe haven't heard our story before.
Yeah, well, I mean, we know there's single listeners, right, who you're like, oh, I know that struggle all too real, where I'm kind of stuck in a lust thing. But for me, the way I learned anything towards intimacy was only surrounding lust. So what really happened for me once I became in like a godly covenant marriage, I realized, oh, wow, I've learned lust for so long that I don't know how to believe love could be real. I've only been objectified. I've only viewed any sexual intimacy towards him getting something and me giving something. And it was very confusing to learn that this could be mutual. It could be actual love. It's not just, oh, he's just lusting after my body, not my heart or my emotions. So hearing that, and I'm sure there are people listening that identify with that story. Jay, what do you say to some of that?
Yeah, I mean, that feels so normal and so common. I think that is the narrative today around teenagers and even married couples, right? I think when we start talking about the differences between love and lust, it's a stark difference. But oftentimes people mistake, I would say more oftentimes people mistake love for lust or the qualities that make up lust as love. And then it becomes very, very confusing, right?
Yeah.
And I'll give you an example. I had a boy that was dating my daughter, and one of the things I told him was
Riley or Edie?
My daughter Edie's one, so
That's
definitely
funny.
Riley.
That was funny.
One of the things that I told him was, please don't tell my daughter that you love her, because when you say you love somebody, if you say I love Kate, that has to carry the same weight as when I say to my wife, I love you. Right? Because our language means something. Words have to mean something.
Yep.
And when a teenager is going to say to my daughter, I love you, well, I don't want her to be confused.
Yep.
Yeah.
So that someday when she's married, she actually understands love means something way different than like.
Totally.
Way different than I have some feelings. Way different than, oh, I'm real horny right now.
Yep.
That's not love. Now, those components may be in there in love, but that's not actually love. So people are probably burning inside going, well, what's the differences? And I would challenge you guys to come up with some of the differences too. But right off the top of my head, if you go, love is a choice, lust is a feeling. I don't wake up in the morning and go, do I really love my wife? Which we would laugh about that. But the truth is so many people have been taught, and we know in culture, because people say all the time, like, I guess we're just not in love anymore, or we fell out of love.
Yeah.
Well, you can't fall in love. You don't trip and fall into love. Love is something that you choose. Now, you could wake up in the morning and not feel anything for her. And I'm sure that you have. If we're honest, I'm sure that you roll over some days and you're like, okay, I don't even assess it anymore. Like, do I feel anything for Lauren? Do I don't? Because when I was 16, my dad told me I didn't feel anything for my girlfriend at the time. And we were in a very committed relationship, probably at 17 at that point. And he said, oh, there's some days where you just won't feel anything. love is a choice at the baseline level. Lust, it's not a choice. Lust is something that you feel. Love is unconditional. Lust is conditional. It needs the right things to happen. There's a prescription for lust. And we know there's a prescription because the porn industry is writing that prescription. Yeah, day after day after day after day. They're not selling love, they're selling lust. Love lasts. It withstands the test of time. Lust, it doesn't. It's instant gratification.
Yeah,
love looks at the long road. It looks at long-term reward. Lust is
different things.
Yes, love is going instant gratification. What can I get right now? I mean, think about the last time that maybe if you're a teenager, when you were lusting after somebody, you weren't thinking 5 years from now, how can we really build this out? You're thinking, how do I get your number? I just heard that song the other day. What does a guy have to do to get your number? I don't know. I was in LA, so somebody was driving by and that's what I heard. And I was like,
I don't know what
that is a perfect picture though of lust. What do I have to do to get this right now? So anyways, my thoughts are that is where we live in an instant gratification world. It's a lust world. You can be lusting for a woman. You can be lusting for a man. You can be lusting after clothes. You can be lusting. How do I get the thing that I want right now? To me, lust.
Yeah.
So what does lust build and what does love build?
Yeah. A very self-centered, selfish, short-term gratification, weak. I mean, think about when you start from a place of what can I get for me in this life? When that's your mode on anything in business.
Yeah.
When you go like, okay, I'm going to start a business because
I want to be rich.
I want to be rich.
Yeah.
How many businesses actually really work out where that's the guy's motivation?
I mean, none that I know.
When you start a business from something that you actually love, like you love it, you're committed to it. It's not a flash in the pan. There's purpose and identity in it. If you talk about, if you're using that word in a business context, you start to go, oh, the guys who eat, breathe, sleep, practice, stick with it, work through it, the hard times, the good times, those are the ones whose businesses succeed.
Yeah.
So, when we start from a place of...
But that takes love, connection, fighting for something, and lust doesn't require a fight.
And let me just say this, like, there's no shame in, you start out like wanting instant gratification.
Right.
That lust thing for me is something I have to manage. Like my lust for fishing, my lust for hunting, even my lust for sex with my wife is something that I have to manage. I have to move it out of this, what can I get for me tonight, into, okay, what are we building?
Yeah. So good.
And what do I want my sex life to be?
Yeah.
That's great.
In your most recent Instagram post about lust versus love, we'll share it on our feed because it's really good. But you put side by side, lust is instant, but love is intentional.
It is.
So even that instant draw of, I want this, it causes you, because of the choice of love, to be intentional.
It does.
Of how do I get that thing in an instant, but build it in an intentional way.
Yeah. And again, no shame. We all feel that.
Yeah.
I think for a large part, we all start out for a second in the lust, like, I really want that. Okay. Now how do I transition? And that's a lot of journeying from boyhood to manhood.
Yeah.
From being a young lady to a woman, is you move your instant desires, into, okay, a desire fulfilled. Like, what is the real fulfillment in here? I want to sleep with this girl. Great. That's like, that's your sex drive. That's attraction. Like, oh man, I really want to hang out, make out, be with this girl. Okay. The man in me goes, I want to build a happy marriage someday.
Yeah.
My sex drive is saying she's a good candidate. Now, I'm not saying that's the only thing that I should listen to. Now the man comes in and goes, is this what you really want? Is this what you should really, let's go to when you're lusting for food, right? You could say, oh, my drive to survive sees a pumpkin pie and it goes, oh, calories. When you eat pumpkin pie, it lowers your anxiety. I mean, because you're filling your body with calories, caloric intake, and you're like, oh, but the long term of that is not super awesome. So it's something that you manage. You're like, well, when can I just go off of my instant gratification? Because that's not always horrible, but it's not ever going to be the best decision.
Yeah, I love that. I love that idea of love being intentional, and even that transition, right? Like our culture doesn't actually really have a clear rite of passage anymore, like other previous cultures have had. And so I think I heard the stat. I don't know if it's accurate fully. I can't quote it fully, but somewhere in the early 20s, like 21 or 22, is when a American young man considers himself an adult. It was like something early 20s, which I'm like, that's crazy. Because if you commit a significant crime at 17, you're going to prison as an adult. Yeah. So if the court is considering you an adult, you should probably figure out how to consider yourself an adult quicker than you were wanting to. But and I think that lack of rite of passage is a part of what you're saying, right? Like when I'm 16, I'm not thinking of long-term ramifications. I'm thinking, what do I want and need right now? Yeah. The more I mature, the more I realize, okay, I can listen to this lust trigger right now, but there's that maturity that comes in and says, well, wait a second, what is going to be the long-term results of this? Yeah. What am I going to lose if I let lust control me right now? Yeah. What am I going to gain if I choose love over lust in this moment, right? Like it's that account for what it's actually going to manifest out of this decision. Let's look at child development. When you look at babies, they only have the ability to think about themselves from a developmental point of view. They actually only think about themselves. So the lust for milk, if I'm allowed to use that word in this context, the lust for comfort, the lust for milk is what it's like, that's survival for them. That's why they cry. They don't care about if the mom slept all night and had a good night's sleep. They don't care that dad worked all day. They don't. They just know, I got to get my needs met. Yeah. And then you look at a toddler, well, their frontal lobe. So if you're listening to this, you're like, your frontal lobe does short and long-term planning. It does cause and effect. And so a child, as their frontal lobe is developing, they have the ability, they start to learn the ability to go do cause and effect and delayed gratification and all that stuff. And so, your son, give me one of them, Caleb. How old's Caleb? I can't remember. 11. So Caleb has the ability to do cause and effect at 11 years old. At that, so maybe he can't go, I need a 401k. He's not thinking 401k. No. But he's probably thinking about, if I practice in baseball right now, I will be better. Yeah. So it's a week out. I can do cause and effect a week out, or 2 weeks out, or 3 weeks out, or 4 weeks out. And then if we put some training behind that, right, we can, again, further develop what's happening naturally. That's great. I put some effort and energy behind it and really build it out for him. But he's still not going to start thinking about his retirement fund until he's, his 30s, unless your dad was like savvy, because your brain's not fully developed. It doesn't even actually naturally have that ability until it develops that ability. And so I'm not saying that you can't speed that process up. I'm saying, just from a natural point of view, what happens if you, and this could be a totally different topic, but again, you grow up in a home where short-term gratification is what is all you're offered ever. Yeah. No one put any time, effort, and energy. And not only that, but you start out from that point. Yeah. Biologically. You're born at a point of just think about yourself. Right. And then you grow up, and thinking about yourself for survival is actually rewarded all the time. Then you never actually do the natural transition, because no one really transitions you into it, which should have happened. So the rite of passage, the reason why the rite of passage is so powerful is you learn at a young age, right? At 9, 10, 11 years old, you are watching the men around you be rewarded for responsibility. Follow me. They're rewarded for taking responsibility. Yep. If there is no reward for responsibility, then why be more responsible? It's great. It's the problem that we have with
sexuality nowadays, right? So you have the sexual revolution, which I know I'm getting a little bit off topic, but we're not that far off topic.
Yeah, that's great.
The sexual revolution happens in the 70s, 60s, 70s. You have everyone flocks to Woodstock. Free love is the mantra or the motto, you know, and what do they learn? Well, why court a woman? Why date a woman? Why carry all this responsibility, win a woman's heart, what their dad did, what all those guys' dads did? Why do all
We're
that?
all look miserable, by the way.
Yeah.
Cool. I'm looking around and seeing miserable marriages.
Why do that if I can get it for free?
Yeah.
So love moves from love, I do all these things, to, oh, love should be lust. That's what we learned. So the transition of the actual word, in my opinion, Jason Valentin's opinion, happened in there.
So, like on a practical level, then, like, let's break this down for those
Yeah.
that are watching. Like, I mean, so good. Now let's take this and apply this to the life. So the individual is saying, wow, I am realizing I'm living for self-gratification. I tuned in to hear about sexual lust, but I'm realizing I've actually got this habit of lust.
Yeah.
I maybe haven't learned how to love or be loved. What are steps that you as an individual could start to implement that would bring you to this place of learning delayed gratification, looking out, inserting love where previously you've had lust?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think that to me, one great place to start is whatever category it is. If it's finances, if it's business, if it's
Coffee.
family, if it's coffee, we can do coffee. I can give a good example there. If it's children, right? So when I turned about 21 years old, I started thinking through, just because that's how my dad taught me to think, what do I want my kids to say about me? Now, I had my son, Elijah, at 19 years old. So my wife was pregnant when I was 18. We actually had him at 19. So 19, 20, I'm starting to think, what do I want my son to say about me when I die?
Wow.
So I call it, just sit at the edge of your grave and write a story about what everyone's going to say about your life. And then work your way backwards. So if I want my son to say he was the best dad, he's the best dad, well, what does it take? What are all the components to being the best dad? So I started thinking, like, communication has to be one of those. Parenting. Okay, I know how to parent. My dad parented really well through really hard times. Okay, do I know how to do that? That's the next question. Do you know how to do that? No. So from there, I went and got Danny Silk's teaching. You just find guides.
Yeah,
Who's
so
the
good.
best guide that you can access, which you can all access Danny Silk's teaching. And I'm not saying that's the path you should take. So for me, I'm like, sit at the edge of your grave or look at your goals 10 years from now. If you want to be able to say, I am an Olympic swimmer. Okay, great. I love swimming so much. I want to dedicate
My life
not
to
a
it.
moment, but my life. What does it take to be the best Olympic swimmer?
Yep.
Well, who's the guide? And then pick your suffering. That's the next thing. Pick your suffering. You're either going to suffer for not doing it.
Or you're going to suffer because
You do all the right things
yeah.
underneath a schedule and a plan and a time. So I was doing a podcast yesterday.
So
And
good.
yeah.
I hope you're listening.
I was doing a podcast yesterday and I said, listen, if your short-term and long-term goals aren't on your calendar
Yeah.
every month, then they're not your priorities. Or you can say it like this. If your priorities can't be found in your money, in your time, in your energy, then they're not really your priorities.
Yeah, it's good.
It's a wish and a dream. It's a hope upon a star.
Yeah.
It's a prayer, and we expect God to come in. And so I'm still on topic, but I want to say to young men and women, like, I'll give another example. I wanted to be able to control my sex drive when I was 15 years old. I was addicted to pornography, struggling with masturbation. I was done with it. Well, if I was really going to be done with following lust, I wore white t-shirts every day. I needed to put on my calendar
Yeah.
My mental calendar as something that reminded you, this is who you are. You are not your desires. You are not, this is who I am. So what I said is, I see that long-term goal, and today I'm going to live it out, and tomorrow, and the next day, and the next day. So what steps are you going to take? That's the homework. What steps are you going to take today to delay gratification? Why would you even want to delay it?
Yeah.
And here's why men delayed gratification when they were going through the rite of passage, or here's why they went through the rite of passage, is because greater responsibility led to that reward. I get seen. If I'm a man 150 years ago who went through a rite of passage, if I'm a boy at 12 years old, when I go through the rite of passage, that responsibility now makes me one of the elite of society. I get praise and honor.
You're stepping into what you always wanted to step into, what you always looked up to, what you
What's
always
rewarded.
wanted to be.
And when you look around at whoever the elite of society are today, and I'm not saying elite with money. If money's your goal, that's fine. If elite in society around marriage, you could look at Danny Silk and go, oh, they're probably in the 2% for marriage. I could look at
Cole and Kate are in the 1% or the 0.5%.
I could look at Cole and Kate and say they're probably in the 1% for enjoying marriage, building marriage because of how intentional, not because of how easy it is, in the 1% of how much work you're doing. Therefore, you get this reward. Oh, your sex life sucked when you first got married. It's better than it's ever been. Typically in marriages today, sex life sucks. And then that bleeds into our communication life. Now our communication life sucks. Oh, now we're falling out of marriage. Oh, now we're, no. So I'm saying to people, moving from lust to love has everything to do with looking at your future and going, I'm going to pick my suffering. I'm going to put on my calendar whatever I want to be. I want to feel like I'm worthy of love. Great. You don't feel worthy of love? No problem. What's the next 30 days of your life? Who is a guide that really loves themselves? What are their steps that you can take this next 30 days to really loving your story, really loving you? It's all about getting out of instant gratification. But if you don't have that long-term goal, and then you don't have something on your calendar, and you don't have your time, effort, money, energy pointed towards it, you won't do it.
Hey guys, if you're like me, then you learn best through interaction. And if that's the case, then the 40-day journey to purity is for you. This is 40 days of amazing content written on the topics of sexuality, sex, relationships, dating, all of those amazing topics that I know you have questions on. And for each day, there are interactive videos and questions. So it's really in depth. You guys should definitely check it out at morerevolution.com and get yours today.
Yeah, that's so great. I love that feeling of that intentionality versus instant. So it's going to take the reverse engineering of going back and figuring out your steps. Is there anything else that you're like on this topic that we need to hear?
Yeah, I think that most of the time when people are fighting in between this lust and love is we actually have our needs unmet. And because I'm starving internally. Now I'm like super battling what's really going on inside. So for instance, if you don't feel lovable, oh, that's a giant need. Let me break it down just smaller. If you don't feel known, or we can go even smaller, if you feel lonely one day, if you just feel lonely, bored could be one of those. You start to get bored, and pretty soon it's like going breakfast and lunch without eating. The chances that you're going to make a good choice to eat something at dinner is not great. Because
like going
why?
Shopping when you're hungry, grocery shopping, worst time to go grocery shopping.
Because you're starving. I'm actually starving mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually. So, the other thing that you could easily do along these goals, right, for your future is sit down and go mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually. And here's something. If you guys write down mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually, and you take a picture of it and you tag us in it, we'll send you a hat or something cool.
Let's do
go.
it.
Like we'll pick one person.
Yeah.
But because here's why. If they actually assess where they're at for their needs, how am I doing? Then you can start to address, or even just being aware. Okay, haven't eaten this morning and haven't eaten lunch. I need to make a really great choice for dinner. Okay, I'm feeling really lonely and I'm not going to be able to solve that right now.
Yeah.
Make sure that I'm managing myself. When I first started dating Lauren, I was like starving for connection because I just got through a divorce a year and a half earlier. So I was like, oh man, I really want that connection. I had to remind myself like on a regular basis, don't speed up this relationship to get to the end. Take every single step. Like I had to just remind myself, you're starving. That's okay. And I'd literally tell myself that, like, you're starving. It's cool. And once I had acknowledged it, it's like I went, So, listen, if you feel insecure is starving.
Yeah.
So if you walk into a girl's house or a guy's house or you're on a date and you're insecure, you are starving. Just say to yourself, I'm starving right now. There's no shame in that. It's fine. Go through and actually, how do I take care of these needs in a really healthy way? I know we have so many resources for that. We've done so much stuff on how to get your needs met in a healthy way. Yeah. But that is one of those where you can move from I'm lusting after this thing to, okay, what's really going to be a loving choice for my life?
Good.
Oh, that's so good. It's what's driving you, lust or love.
Exactly.
Great way to end it.
Yeah.
I think it's super powerful.
Yeah. And sitting at the end of your grave thinking, what drove me? Was it the lust? Was it the instant gratification?
A lot of good stuff.
Or the love?
Yeah.
I love it.
I love it.
We love it.
We love it.
Thanks for being here. Let's talk about it.
Thank you guys for listening. If you want to learn more and check out all of our awesome content, be sure to head to our website at moralrevolution.com and our socials, Instagram, Facebook, all of them. But before you leave, don't forget to like, review, subscribe, all of the things. We want you guys to come back and join us. We enjoyed having you. See you next time.